A silent pandemic has spread among American youth. Gender dysphoria and a radical medical experiment billed as its proper treatment. That's according to a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Jay Richards. He warns that with the passage of a new law in California last Friday, parents across the country can now lose custody of their daughters and sons if they resist the upending of natural puberty in that state. I spoke with Jay earlier today. Jay Richards, welcome to our show. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, Newsom says that this law is about protecting parents' choices, but you say that it's an attack on parents' rights. Could you elaborate?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the really best way to think of this law in California is that the governor has made California a magnet for children from other states who might be seeking so-called gender-affirming care, whether that be cross-sex hormones or even double mastectomies for minors. So needless to say, in some states, this is either prohibited or not available, or at the very least, parents have a say in that. We recognize parents have the primary right and responsibility for the upbringing and medical care of their children. What California essentially is doing is saying, okay, if a child can get his or her feet into the state of California, a California court can basically grant temporary custody to the state, take the custody away from the parent so that the child can receive these so-called treatments. I mean, I can't imagine a more direct affront to parents' rights in other states than this.
And the law also mandates that in certain circumstances, doctors must conceal a child's medical information from their parents.
That's exactly right. And in fact, even under a court-ordered subpoena, doctors can hide this information. In fact, they're more or less required to do so. So in other words, if you're a parent, let's say there's a mom and a dad and they're in a custody battle with their child, one of the parents wants the child to start cross-sex hormones, and so he takes her to California from their home state of Arkansas. He can get this procedures done, no questions asked, and the records will be sealed. So the mom back in Arkansas doesn't even know what's happened or doesn't have any evidence of it. I mean, the sort of ideological nature of this law is staggering. California was already doing this to California citizens, in which Child Protective Services could take children away from parents who didn't want to allow their children to be treated in this way. Now they're extending it to the entire country.
And there's concern that in these circumstances, non-custodial parents could use this law to get custody of their children by facilitating transgender treatments for them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what's so strange about this. So normally if a non-custodial parent takes a child across state lines, states cooperate. I mean, it's a form of kidnapping. But in this case, you can have the non-custodial parent actually, in some kind of dispute. As long as they get the child to the state of California, that's what matters.
And under this law, California doctors can now send puberty-blocking drugs to minors in other states. What are your concerns here?
Well, I mean, this is especially bizarre. And so in this case, because of telemedicine, I mean, this really makes it very easy. And so a child, again, say someplace like Texas, could just get on Zoom with a doctor in California. The doctor could prescribe that child puberty-blocking drugs, which essentially freezes a child's development in place, and cross-sex hormones, which that's testosterone for girls and estrogen for boys. These are experimental treatments. These drugs are not approved by the FDA for these purposes, and so by definition, they're experimental. They have massive side effects. They're not reversible, despite the fact that people are told that. And this could be happening pretty much anywhere in the country unless it's stopped. I'm actually hoping that provision, because it may involve interstate commerce, will actually get struck down. But at the moment, the legal status of this is unknown.
Trans advocates say that transition surgeries and drugs save lives. But you say that medical care is being used as a disguise for the attack on parental rights here. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, there is a debate. Okay, you have children, including a massive increase of the number of children presenting with symptoms of gender dysphoria, in other words, of discomfort with their sex bodies. All of us want kids to be treated for that. What we know is that if kids are allowed to go through puberty, engage in talk therapy, deal with underlying psychological comorbidities, the vast majority become comfortable with their bodies once they get through puberty. On the other hand, if kids are told that, well, they could be born in the wrong body, and so they need to transform their bodies to conform to a false understanding of their person, that's going to lead to a completely different treatment. And so we want really, really good evidence that this actually helps. We're told that so-called gender-affirming care reduces thoughts of suicide ideation, and actual suicide. None of the data bear that up. In fact, if you look at the best data we have, if anything, people that go through this, certainly kids that go through this, actually are more likely to commit suicide rather than less. And so, we've got both a kind of worldview question and a medical question, what's the best treatment for this? And then we've got these kind of fake science questions that are unfortunately bolstering the ideological use of science like we see in California.
The Constitution requires states to defer to each other's laws and jurisdictions. Do you think we can reasonably expect legal action from other states on this?
That's what I'm really hoping for. I mean, this clearly is a violation of the rights of other states because, the law is literally designed to do that. It's designed to have California's experimental medical treatments for minors be able to claim jurisdiction over kids from other states as long as they can find their way into the state of California. So it literally creates an incentive for children to abandon their families who care the most for them. And so I do hope that other states are very quick to sue California, and I hope that this law gets struck down very quickly.
You pointed to social media as a massive influence in spreading the trans movement, and children are increasingly exposed to these ideas in school as well. What do you think parents can do to protect their children here?
Parents need to know that's happening. So if you have your kids in a school and you don't know whether they're being taught gender ideology, they probably are. Insist on transparency, not just for curriculum, but also for any materials that are brought into class. And then frankly, find out what they're doing on social media. We know at least 65% of kids that first present with these symptoms get these initially from social media influencers who paint a rosy picture of what life like this is like. And so kids are getting it both from authority figures at school and from their social media. And parents really just can't be more careful on this stuff. In fact, I think they need to think of social media as a disease vector for a particular ideological contagion.
And parental rights groups had urged Governor Newsom to veto the bill. Now that it's through, what else can they do to push back?
Well, unfortunately, at this point, it's going to take lawfare because it's law in the state of California, and so California is going to have to be sued. We need organizations that have standing, certainly parents of other kids, but legal groups are looking at this right now. Heritage Foundation was a part of a group that had urged California not to do this. I would expect major lawsuits in the near future.
Jay Richards, Senior Research Fellow of the Heritage Foundation, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
If you love kids, share this
Major
video.
medical